So welcome to the second event of the 2025-2026 Agenda Alexandria season. My name is Steve Davidson. I am the chair, and I want to ask the other members of the Board of Directors of Agenda to stand up and be recognized. So Jackie, JoAnn, thank you guys. Quick show of hands, how many of you have been to an Agenda Alexandria event before? All right, most of you. How many of you have not? Few of you. Okay, I'm going to just go over a couple of quick ground rules. Agenda Alexandria is a nonprofit. Our mission is to provide a forum for informed, considered discussion. These are moderated topics, and so our ground rules are we do not do a town hall format. If you have questions, and we want you to ask questions, we're going to ask you to write them down on the index cards that are being passed around. Please write them legibly, and please no speeches, because I'm going to have to filter through those. So just the questions. We don't have audience participation. This is not a comedy club, so please no heckling from the floor. If you don't like something that is said, write something down, hand it up to me, and that's my job. So I would like to just recognize we couldn't do this without our sponsors. Our sponsors are up on the screen there, the Zebra, Simpson, and Atlantic Union Bank. And we also couldn't do this without our sustaining members. I'm going to read them very quickly. Eileen Ahern, Linda App, Mary Bickford, Barbara Brennan, Roy Bird, Steve Davidson, William Dickinson, Ginny Franco, Rod Cuckrow, Christopher Lewis, David McClure, Jim Roberts, Jennifer Rohrbach, Bill Rossello, Elizabeth Seltzer, David Speck, Carol Supley, Robert Test, Ed Ward, and Mark Williams. And without these folks, we could not, for example, rent facilities, pay for audiovisual, and all the stuff that we have to do, maintain a website, and communicate with you guys. So I very much appreciate our sponsors. They enable this to happen. Just a quick word about tonight's program. We came up with the concept for tonight's program in June and early July. We felt that since civil discourse is at the core of what Agenda Alexandria is about, it would be appropriate to have a conversation about what is a longstanding apparent decline in civil discourse. This was long before a recent unfortunate act of political violence took place, and there was some discussion as to whether we should have this event, and the answer is absolutely we should. But we are not here to discuss that. We are not here to lay blame. We are not here to do, tomato throwing between R's and D's. That's not what this is about. We are here to talk about civil discourse in the abstract and how it applies to the city of Alexandria and the world. All right. So real quick, I'm going to introduce our panelists. I have no doubt that you have seen written material about them, so we're going to do this very, very quickly in the interest of time. Kate is, I think, from my perspective, you're the first Pulitzer Prize winner to be on the Agenda Alexandria stage, so thank you very much. She used to be with the Washington Post. She is a resilient strategist. She has her Invisible Threads Substack. There's a QR code if you're interested up by the registration table, so you can read them. They're very interesting. Next to her is Professor JoAnn Koob. She is a professor of law associate professor, right? Yes. At the Antonin Scalia School at George Mason. And she has done a lot of work on things like First Amendment, the intersection of public discourse and democracy. Next to her is Lieutenant Victor Ignacio. He is with the Sheriff's Department. He is probably the most ubiquitous and visible member of the Sheriff's Department who isn't running for office.
No, I'm not.
He is everywhere. I see him in Del Rey when they have those evening things. He's involved with programs like if you are away from home and you'd like the Sheriff's Department to keep an eye on your house, he's the guy that responds. He's everywhere. And next to him is an Alexandria living legend, Carter Flemming, who many people here know. She has been involved with civic associations. She's, what is it, the chair of the Association of Civic Associations, or Federation? Federation of Civic Associations. Been involved in many, many important issues related to the city of Alexandria, and she's the perfect person to be here to give us the Alexandria lay of the land. The way this is going to flow, we have 4 parts. Part 1, we're going to do a very brief stage setting. Want to make sure we're all speaking the same language. Second part, we're going to talk about the timeline. When did all of this civil discourse problem happen? Third part is talking about the root causes. Where does this come from? And then the fourth part is going to focus on what are we going to do about it, both individually and collectively as a society. So, you guys ready? First part's quick. In a sentence or two, and we're going to just work our way down the line, what is your definition for the words civil discourse?
So the way I look at civil discourse is people practicing compassionate curiosity about another person's experience, ideas, and perspectives, with the emphasis on compassionate curiosity.
Okay, JoAnn.
I really focus on the word civil in civil discourse, which is, I think, has 2 sort of connotations. One is it's about civil society, about things that interest us or, our concerns as citizens, as members of a democracy. And the other way you can also define civil, of course, is politeness and making sure you're being respectful and thoughtful in your interchange of ideas. And so I think civil discourse is about those dialogues that are about these important issues that affect us all, but are also respectful and involve the interchange of ideas.
And from a law enforcement perspective,
I
Victor.
go much more simpler. Being respectful, valuing other people's opinion, even if you don't agree with them.
Cool. Carter.
Well, being last doesn't have a
I know,
perk
I'm
because,
sorry.
But anyway, I would agree that being respectful and the word discourse to me is also important, because to me that would mean an even exchange of ideas and everybody listening to everybody else. So I think both of those words are very important.
Okay. The next question is for the audience. This is a raise your hand question. Please raise your hand if you found yourself changing or even avoiding relationships due to political differences. A lot of hands went up. Okay. Now, keep your hand, or raise your hand again if you'd help reduce the level of divisiveness in the if you'd like to help reduce the level of divisiveness in the community. A lot of hands. Okay. So now, Victor, I'm going to throw this one to you. Has the apparent decline in civil discourse impacted trust and cooperation between the community and law enforcement?
Yes. Just about every day we run into issues with trust and law enforcement. Everybody has their own opinion. Information gets out there too quick. The information gets out before it's vetted, before they look into it, and everybody believes what everybody else is saying without fact checking, which is caused a lot of issues. There's a lot of street-level attorneys when we go out in the streets. There's a lot of people that, like I'm sure you guys have run into this, where someone is asking you a question, and before you could answer them, they're responding back to you already before they give you an opportunity to answer the question, which means they're not really listening to you. So yes.
Okay. All right. Now, we're going to go into the timeline category. I just wanted to do this quick stage setter. But, this issue is clearly a national level issue, but we are Agenda Alexandria, not Agenda America. So I'd like Carter to start us off with a very Alexandria-centric view and talk a bit about the changes in civil discourse here in town over your lifetime, because you are a lifer here.
Long lifer here.
And share with us changes in the relationship between, for example, the city and the citizenry.
Well, thank you, Steve. Yes, I think most of us would agree there's been a marked change in the level of discourse within the city. I think back to a lot of other issues in decades past, and they were contentious and heated, but they were not personal. And the difference is now politics and opinions have become very personalized. And we could say, some of us could say that it comes from the national scene where that is the case. I think it's interesting to think back to 1971, which I was obviously alive then too, and Saul Alinsky wrote a book, Rules for Radicals. And while you wouldn't think that the current political scene in America would be reflective of that, some of the rules were pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. And so I think when you think of that, it's weaponizing opinions and personalizing in a way that never used to happen, but certainly does happen to any of us who go before council or at city meetings to testify or to give our opinion. It becomes very personal very quickly.
Victor, you've been in Alexandria a very long time as well. Can you reflect on changes you've seen?
Yes, politically, I'm going to jump on that. It's basically, I'm going to go back to speaking to a gentleman friend of ours, old elderly gentleman, because I'm already old, so somebody a little older than I am. He discussed that, for example, back in the 60s, has basically two neighbors, both have signs in their yard belonging to the different political parties, but at the same time, they were able to meet up on weekends and have cookouts, and families were still friends. In my neighborhoods around, we don't really get into politics, but I know plenty of people in the city that, based on that, if I have a sign representing a party and the person next to me, who I've been friends with, decides that he wants to put a sign representing another party, those are basically fighting words, and we'll never speak to each other again, which is the way of the world. It's the way the national news is leading to, and that's what everyone is basically doing. We can't have an opinion. If my opinion doesn't align with your opinion, then yours is not right. It's not. We can't agree to disagree anymore, which is sad, and that's happening all over the place. It happens in schools. It happens in government. It happens in the neighborhood. It happens among kids, and parents are basically the leading. When it comes to the kid, parents are the leading factor, because I took a picture of a few elementary school kids playing together, and there's a bunch of different socioeconomic races and everything, and they were just having fun. Then adult factor get involved, and then they start looking at each other different. Parents disagree for reasons, that have really not real reasons. I've been involved in incidents where I'm investigating something that happened over it was allegedly said something against a person, and eventually, once we got to the bottom of it, it wasn't really anything, but they heard and they believe, and eventually they went against each other because of what they believe. And that's just the way it is right now. But when it comes to that, I think right now it's about going back to the basics, going back to parenting, respecting each other's belief, respecting each other. When I was teaching gang awareness back in the days, I used to tell parents, if your child or if you don't respect each other at home, if your child doesn't respect you, how do you expect that child to respect anybody else's opinion? So,
Okay. JoAnn, and by the way, the concept that we're toast, I think I'm going to reject that until we get to part 4, because I mean, part 4 is about remediation for it. But before we get there, JoAnn, can you extrapolate what we're seeing locally to the national scene?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, there's a survey done by Pew that was put out in 2022 that, I mean, just tells me, I find it so devastating. So I'll just share it with you. And the survey is asking people of either political party how they feel, or how they feel about people in the other political party. And it's around 60%, a little bit more Republicans, how they feel about Democrats, and vice versa, and a little less than 60%. Strongly, I'm trying to remember the word, but they have like a strongly negative opinion about people of the other party, strongly. And when you look at they have a negative view of people of the other party, it's close to 90%. That was in 2022, and that's just based on one little tiny fact you know about someone, and jumping to that conclusion that you have negative feelings towards them based on one little data point. And actually, as far as how long has this been going on? In 1994, it was approximately a third that level. So it has increased like 3 times in a 30-year period. So I think, we really have seen a decline in civil discourse and a rise in polarization in that time frame. So.
Okay. Now, Kate, when we spoke in preparation for this panel, you pointed out that there are kinds of stresses that lead to incivility, and that these are not new. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, so to orient people, I look at the connections between mental health and democracy. And a lot of times when I tell people that, they'll say, oh, like the political situation is causing mental health problems now. Mental health, and essentially, I look at what are the factors that affect the quality and the health of our relationships with ourselves and the health of our relationships with other people. And this is a timeless theme. It's not that something has changed now. The level of rhetoric and civility is more intensified now. But in terms of the human condition, our well-being, our individual well-being, has always affected our collective well-being. And one of the things that's really important when we talk about civility and civil discourse and being polite and being respectful is that it is connected to how safe we feel. And it is connected to how much stress we feel. And so when all of us are sitting here right now, if you're alive and you are not a robot, it means that you have a nervous system inside of you. And our nervous system is our command and control center that's made up of our brain stem, our nerves and cells. And our nervous system's main job is to keep us alive. And so it's constantly scanning for information. It's taking in what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell. It takes all this information and it compares it to what we've experienced in the past, what our parents have told us, what the television tells us. And its main job is trying to keep us safe. So our nervous system is constantly scanning and asking, am I safe? Am I safe enough to connect, to let down my guard? Am I safe enough to listen and be open to what another person is saying? And if I don't feel safe because I've experienced something myself that has made me afraid, or if I don't feel safe because I've seen something on television or on social media, or because my parents over generations didn't feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you can live in a heightened state of stress. And when you're in a heightened state of stress, you're scanning for danger. You're looking for what might hurt you. And when you're looking for what might hurt you, you're not open and curious and as polite. You're on guard. You're ready to fight or run away. or maybe you're just so overwhelmed that you shut down. So right now, we are living the human condition, which we have lived for generations. And we also happen to be in a time when technology has learned to activate us and keep us revved up. And we're also living in a time when politicians know the psychology of how to keep people revved up, right? So we are in a time where it's the timeless condition of being human, coupled with technology and an understanding of how to keep people dysregulated and therefore divided. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to you on the next question, because I'd like to talk a little bit about longer timescales. We all know from history class that conflicts often resulted in duels, pistols at dawn. And in preparation for tonight, I read an extract from a book, and I'm going to read, the title is The Age of Acrimony, How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy, 1865 to 1915. The author is a historian from the Smithsonian, and his argument is that the times that we live in now aren't actually unprecedented, and in fact, his argument is that the bulk of the 20th century, when it was the good old days, was actually more of an anomaly for a democracy. You said something along those lines when we spoke, and I'm wondering if you want to pick up on that a little bit and maybe amplify what the point you just made.
Yeah, so this historian is saying that, well, let's just back up. How many people have said, this is the most divided we've ever been, or heard somebody said it, or it's never been this bad before? And it might feel that way. And what this historian is saying is, no, actually, we've had real bad times before, and actually the good times are the anomaly, if I'm understanding the thesis
That was his
correctly.
thesis, yeah.
So the period that he's talking specifically about is post-Civil War. And if, let's go back in time, Andrew Jackson was president at the time. This is a very now controversial president. He stood in the way of Reconstruction. He stood in the way of freed people having rights. He was impeached. He pardoned Confederates, getting in the way of a new direction for the South. And so there are many parallels, some might say, to what's happening today. I think when we ask the question, well, we've been here before, or it's been bad before, a lot of times people are seeking solace that these things do happen, that these cycles occur. And we can take solace in that yes, we've been through it and we've come out of it. And I also think that there's a certain historical fatalism to that approach. Because while there were similarities, including massive technological change, back then railroads were coming in, industrialization was coming in.
Telegraph.
The telegraph was coming in, AI. So, we're experiencing massive technological change today as well. But the difference, and this is why I don't accept we've been here before and therefore we'll get out of it, while there are similarities, there are also differences. We now have science that helps us understand the neurobiology of polarization. We have science that helps us understand how collective trauma is passed down through generations and how collective trauma leads to polarization, which opens the door to authoritarianism. We also have tech companies that understand the neuroscience and the psychology and have engineered phones to keep us addicted. And so there are similarities, and the difference is that we know better now. We have the science to understand what's happening, whereas we didn't have it then. So the difference is that we can act. We can do something about this. And if we don't, we'll be 250 years in the future looking back at us today saying, why didn't they do something?
Okay, well, that really is a good lead into part 3, some of the root causes. And JoAnn, I'm going to throw this one your way. There is a natural tension between free speech and civil discourse. When people express themselves, it sometimes ticks people off. Does protecting free speech come at the expense of civility?
I actually think overall, civil discourse and free speech are mutually reinforcing. There are some tensions, which I'll dive into, but I think by and large, they are fostering a lot of the same goals. They are there to help us have an honest, open exchange of ideas, to promote democratic engagement, to let people express their views, to create a marketplace of idea. In both the First Amendment and the ideal of civil discourse are geared towards that. Of course, the First Amendment protects a lot more than civil discourse. It protects uncivil discourse as well. And so in that sense, there can be a little bit of tension. People may decide the best way to express themselves is to be uncivil, or through protest, or through other means that don't fit in our civil discourse ideal, and that would be protected free speech that they're able to engage in as citizens. And so some people think there's a tension there, but I think that there are different ways of trying to achieve change. I happen to believe civil discourse is overall, in the long run, and the majority of the time, probably more effective, but there are other means to express yourself legally in this country, and I do think that's a good thing. The other thing that can happen is sort of the reverse, which is when people will silence those who are being less than civil by saying, oh, you're not being civil, I won't even listen to you, or using civil discourse or politeness as a way to shut people down if they're not following the exact cultural norm that they should be following at the moment. That can also be used to kind of quiet people. And so I do think there's tension on that end as well. So there are, I think most of the time they are moving in the same direction, but occasionally there can be some discord there.
Okay. All right. We all consume news in different ways, and I'm old, so I remember when America sat down and watched Walter Cronkite and Huntley and Brinkley on TV at night, and now we're in an era where there are a multiplicity of news sources, and there is apparently an incentive for news media to amp up the intensity in order to, and maybe catastrophize in order to get viewership or clicks. So I'm gonna ask Kate if you would like to talk to that, because I'm sensing that that's contributing to the intensity or incivility.
Yeah, so we live in a capitalist country, capitalist society, and public media is no longer funded by the government. And so for the corporate media, in order to stay in business, they need to generate ad revenue. They need to attract viewers to their videos. They need to attract people to click through the stories and actually pay to subscribe to the publication. And in order to attract people to pay money for information in an increasingly crowded information environment, increasingly crowded media environment, where people have shortened attention spans, you have to really think, how do I attract this person to spend time watching this video or spend time reading this article and care enough about it or be intrigued enough about it to pay for it? Or if they don't pay for it themselves, to spend long enough time on this video that our advertisers will continue to want to give us money because they know that people will see the banner at the top of the newspaper or the ad in the YouTube video. So advertisers have long known you kind of excite the brain, or you scare the person, or you get them wanting something like sugar cereal in the morning on Saturdays with cartoons. People figure out how to make you want something, and it is no different with news. And I will say that news, like any industry, or journalism, like any industry, has good practitioners and bad practitioners. and really well-intentioned people who also don't have enough resources or time or support to do the things they need to do well. And many of them do really good jobs, and then somebody slaps a headline on their excellent story that is designed to rev you up so that you click on it, and it continues the ecosystem so that they have enough money to do their job. I forget the question.
I think I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Victor, does the amping up of stories in the press affect your ability as a law enforcement officer to do your job?
Yes, I mean, if you have a phone, you're a reporter. Anytime you pull up on the scene, you better bet that there's 6, 7 phones that are filming you. And everybody has their own opinion. It starts being put in all around the neighborhood. By the time we're done with a call, everybody knows about the call. And what does that do? We can't. It affects us doing the job that we're supposed to be doing.
You're saying because you have a crowd around you, you can no longer do that.
And when in the days, it will take a little while for people to get there. By now, they hear the calls on the radio. They have the app that tells them what's going on. So some of them get there before we do. And then what happens is they film. Everybody wants to be first. They start posting. The news media will get it. And to her point, to get attention, even if we've done everything right, they can't just say that. They want to, if you say the police came over and did everything that they were supposed to be doing, everything was fine, no one wants to listen to that. But if you say, let's see, like, I hear this on the radio all the time. Police officer chased vehicle into 395, car crash. Oh, what happened? We go to commercial. When they come back, they tell you, oh, by the way, he robbed a bank, he assaulted somebody. If they had started, a man that robbed the bank, assaulted somebody, was chased by the police, he crashed, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when you're telling someone that the police chased someone, and that's basically what they do. They post, they tell you to keep you hanging. It's even when you're reading something about a recipe that you're reading. Yeah, this is good, and then they throw an infomercial in there because they want to keep you. But in order to see the entire recipe, you have to go through the infomercial. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what they're doing now when it comes to law enforcement. Everybody's a reporter. It takes, by the time they post and they tell you what's going on, by the time we get to it, by the time the real story comes around, it's too late. Everybody has their own opinion already. Mm. And that's what we're fighting against.
Okay. Quick question for Carter. So social media is a whole nother dimension. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about how that has affected discourse in Alexandria.
I would say that probably is just about the number one thing that's affected civil discourse in Alexandria. People hide behind fake names, and they feel empowered to say things that they would never say face-to-face to anybody. And if you look at a couple of the blogs that people run here in Alexandria, I think everybody in the audience would probably be quite stunned to see the level of vulgarity and the spewing of venom against individuals, not just against policies or parties, but calling people by name and using profanity that I wouldn't dare say here in front of this audience, but and so you don't get a dialogue, is what I mean. You get a one-sided attack on people that disagree with you, but you don't have really the opportunity to respond because this is an inside thing where they're speaking to their followers. And I think most people don't want to respond to that kind of obscenity and vulgarity. But like Kate said, this is what attracts people. They think, wow, these people are really calling people out, and this is really exciting. And the problem that I see is that people who are doing this, there is no repercussion for them at all. Two of them that are running one of the more well-known blogs here sit on boards in Alexandria and were endorsed by the Democratic Party in a failed run for council. So if you don't call people to task for having uncivil discourse, I don't know what you do, and maybe some of our scholars here know what you do to counter that.
We are absolutely going to get to that in a couple of minutes.
Good.
Just a follow-up question. Do we see that kind of behavior happening among the citizenry, or do local officials sometimes involve themselves the same way?
Well, certainly the blog I'm talking about is regular citizens, but I think anybody who has had occasion to testify before city council at any point has seen in the last 10 years a complete difference from what it used to be, that you would go up and people would acknowledge you and say thank you for talking. Now it's a challenge and it's a retort, like, you know, why are you saying that? And it's dripping with sarcasm.
Okay.
And so it is not, most residents don't want to go speak to their elected officials now because they know if they dare to say something that isn't in perfect alignment with the policy being discussed, they will be dismissed and denigrated. And if not that day, it'll be on social media that night, like, can you believe that so-and-so said this? So that's a problem, a big problem locally, I think, for our dialogue here.
All right, thank you. Part of my training as a physicist involved learning to differentiate between an observable, measurable, reproducible bit of data and fact, and the interpretation or inference or opinion. If Fred pours ketchup into Mary's herbal tea, the observable and measurable fact is he contaminated her tea, and one can infer that he's a jerk, but that he's a jerk is not necessarily a fact. It's an interpretation. It may be that she actually likes ketchup in her tea. We don't know. So JoAnn, it's a terrible analogy, and I'm sorry. I needed to come up with something quick. JoAnn, do most people have a hard time disentangling or differentiating between observable, provable, testable, documentable fact and opinion or interpretation?
Well, I don't know if most people have a difficult time with that or not. I haven't looked into it, but I mean, I think one thing that we do see is a lot of opinions being touted as facts, and also when we're looking at our news sources, they're so skewed to one side that it's sometimes the opinion versus fact is really hard to differentiate. And how much is it skewed? Is it actually fact? And so I think we really want to focus on, when we're thinking about facts, can it be tested? Is it independently verifiable? Is the person telling us the fact? Are they coming at it with a skewed viewpoint? And so when we're really trying to differentiate, especially in these areas that are not science, like hard science or math, is trying to look for multiple sources from different viewpoints or more neutral sources, looking for, when people are very clear and transparent about where they're getting their information. Is it consistent with what other people are saying? So I think those are tools people can use when trying to differentiate it.
Okay, Kate, do you want to comment from a journalist perspective? And my thinking is, in ye olden days when you had news coming from professional journalists, they wouldn't think of publishing something unless they had multiple sources that corroborated. But we're in an era where we have citizen journalists, and sometimes those types of checks may or may not be done. you want to take a crack at this?
Yeah, my answer will be unsatisfactory to those who want to say before it was better. Because before, when Walter Cronkite was telling the news, you felt you could trust it. If you were a person of a particular race and maybe a particular class. But Walter Cronkite didn't necessarily tell the news from the perspectives of more marginalized communities. And while he published news that had multiple sources, what were those sources? And what power and privilege did those people have? So it's a messy answer because, and I want to go back to the citizen journalism, which makes your job so hard and which makes your interactions with the public very strained. Part of the reason we have citizen journalism is not only because of the advent of technology that gives everybody cameras, but because of loss of trust in institutions and loss of trust in power, right? And so part of the reason why people are filming the police, unfortunately, is because there have been incidents where people don't trust the police, right? And so we're in a situation on many, many levels where there is decline in trust in all of our institutions and decline in trust in each other. And it goes back to this idea of safety and what are the conditions that make people safe or not. This is, very convoluted, but in terms of facts, you were exactly right, observable facts. You were exactly right, comparing it essentially from different perspectives. A fact is not something that you like. I asked a person at a Trump rally, what is a fact? And he said, a fact is something that I like. And that is, no, it isn't. I have talked to many Democrats who have said essentially the same thing with different words, that people are selecting what they want to be a fact based on what they like. And we're at a point where we need to increase our capacity to sit with the discomfort of facts being uncomfortable. And we have to recognize that we've lost trust in institutions because the institutions are not keeping pace with the challenges of today.
Okay. That's actually a good lead into the last question in this block, and that is, Kate, your organization addresses the intersection of the psychological and the societal and the influences that it has on people. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the world around us impacts our ability to deal with different perspectives, to listen, to be open to be able to disagree without being disagreeable?
Yeah. So I want to answer this by asking Carter a question. Oh. When you were talking about the forums in Alexandria and the vitriol and the lack of respect that people show for each other on them, what was your stress? What were you experiencing? Were you experiencing stress?
Well, yes, when they call my name, I am, yes.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Even listening to Carter talk about it, I felt stress. I felt stress in my body. And when I feel, stress is not always a bad thing. Good stress enables you to meet a deadline. Good stress enables you to run out in the road and grab your grandchild from a car. That revs you up and keeps you safe. It keeps you surviving. But stress can also make you feel like there is danger around you. Sometimes when it is, if the car is coming towards your grandchild, and sometimes when it isn't. So when Carter was talking in that moment about these online attacks, in this moment, in this room, you are safe. I hope.
Yes.
Yeah. You are safe. But all of us probably have had the experience where we have felt a level of stress and a level of threat just by reading something that we disagree with or just by talking to someone who has a difference of opinion from us. It can almost feel like an existential threat to our safety. So in order to fix the system, in order to fix democracy, the way I look at it is we have to look at what is our sphere of influence at different times. I look at it on an individual level, me or you. I look at it as a collective level, us. And then I look at it as a systemic level, democracy. Sometimes in the moment, the best thing you can do to save democracy is to notice your own state of stress. And to notice, is this stress helpful for me in the moment? Is it going to help keep me safe? Or is it making me more activated and making me scan for danger and threats in a way that I will be more guarded, more defensive, run away, shut down, isolate? We are in patterns of reactivity. We are reacting to each other's stress. And then asking, why can't we fix democracy when we're unable even to save ourselves? Does that make sense? So in this moment, if you're wondering how to change them, I hear this in left and right. We have to fix them. We have to change them. We have to get them over to us. Spend half as much time noticing your stress and how it's affecting your relationship with yourself and how it's affecting your relationship with others.
So we're going to start moving into the unit on what can we do to make things better. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but JoAnn, you run the Public Discourse Project. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about it. And from my perspective, it's got some great ideas that I think could be part of the cure.
Yeah, so in addition to teaching at George Mason, I work with an academic center, and through that center started a civil discourse program called the Public Discourse Project in 2019, basically in response to probably what brought you all here today. Just seeing all the polarization and vitriol in our public discourse. And the question was, well, what can we do about it? And it's actually a really simple concept. It is get students talking to one another across their differences. And so what we have a variety of different programs, but it usually comes down to getting students in a room, giving them a meal that gets them into the room, and gets adults into the room too, let's be honest. But so have some food, and then talk to them about why is civil discourse important, how you go about engaging in civil discourse, and then having them have small group, sometimes one-on-one, usually small group conversations about, current issues in politics, in law, in society. And the conversations start a little guided. They have a conversation guide to get it sort of started on the right foot, which is generally identifying some commonalities, like, getting to know each other a little bit. And then they dive into the topics, and they spend most of these, I'll call it workshops, really talking to one another in groups that are, we put them in groups so that they aren't with just all their friends, and they're talking to people with different viewpoints about really tough issues. And we've had a lot of, we've had amazing feedback. It's been really fun to do. I brought it to a number of other schools too. So, most of our events are where I work, but I also have done these events in California, Wisconsin, Georgetown, so a number of different places.
So it's been a long time since I was a student, but student debates have a tendency to be very passionate and intense, like society. What do you do with those groups, besides feeding them, to help keep things civil?
Part of it is, how you're framing things, right? So starting out by talking about what values drive people's beliefs. And so the way you do that in a conversation about a policy issue is, we focus on getting the students to ask each other questions. So this came up a little bit earlier, but you know how when you're sort of in a heated debate with someone or you disagree with someone and they're making a point on a topic and you have a different viewpoint and you spend half your brain is literally thinking of your comeback, right? and then you almost might cut them off trying to tell them your clever comeback, and you're not really listening, and you're not really learning from them. And so we encourage students not to do that, but rather to listen very intently and have their first response be a question. Ask a question, learn more. And then that stops that cycle of come back, respond, the back and forth cycle, because you're pausing and you're really diving into one person's beliefs. And then we also want people to channel their inner sort of toddler and ask why. What drives that? What outcomes are you hoping to achieve, or do you think that will achieve, or what do you fear will happen if things don't go that way? But really get at those core values, because often people have they almost always have much more in common than may seem on the surface, because the same value might be driving their policy position, like fairness, but they think that this course will lead to fairness, and someone else thinks this course will lead to fairness. And once they identify that they actually have the same ultimate goal, it's much easier to start really listening and hearing and understanding someone else's beliefs. So, that's one thing we do. If things do get heated, one thing you can do is actually sit back, talk slow, talk soft, because people mirror, right? And so if things are too heated, you want to take it back, then you do that first, and that actually really helps too.
Okay. Victor, law enforcement, you have people have training in de-escalation. I can only imagine that tensions are especially high now that ICE has come to town and that people are tense. What kinds of techniques do law enforcement officials use to take it down?
I think it's basically just what they're saying, just listening. You have to listen to people's concerns. You have to everybody has issues. They want someone to listen to them. And if they see that you're not really interested or paying attention, they're not going to tell you what's going on. We get calls all the time. ICE is in town. What do we do? We try to tell them, hey, stay out of the roadway. Don't do anything criminal. Don't get arrested. That kind of stuff. But the fact is, just when we talking to people, it's just that. Listen, people want to be heard. And if I'm listening, someone is speaking to me about the issue that they were dealing with. It could be whatever it is that they're dealing with at the time. It's big for them. It may not be big for me, but it's big for them. If I act like it's not really a big deal to me, then they're going to shut down. They're not going to say anything. I'm actually going to jump to something even different. When interviewing somebody, so if I'm picking back on what they say, if I start yelling and screaming, if the inmate or suspect is or the witness is screaming and yelling, and I'm doing the same, we're not listening to each other. We're not listening to each other. But when you talk, you just got to listen to people and listen actively. Ask the question. Make sure, hey, is this what you mean? How can I help? Show your interests. And if you show empathy and interest and that you care, people are going to talk because people want to be heard.
Okay, to your approach, where people feeling threatened or unsafe tends to get them revved up. Do these techniques go directly to the feeling of safety and security and comfort?
Yeah, so in every country and culture that I've ever reported on or lived in, I've lived in Cuba, Cambodia, Hong Kong, I've reported from South Sudan, and I was at the Capitol on January 6th. And the common theme that I saw between all of the people is that people are in pain and they want to feel better. And when you're in pain, whether it is physical, mental, social, you have a loss of control in your life. You have a loss of dignity. Oftentimes, you feel like people don't know you or don't see you. And so when you have a loss of control, one of the only things you have control over is your story. And if someone is listening to you and showing you compassionate curiosity, that can be a rehumanizing gesture. And I will say, when I was at the Capitol on January 6th, I was wearing a bulletproof vest. I had a camera person with me. I was clearly press. And when members of the mob realized that I was a journalist, they swarmed me. And they started threatening me, and they started calling me enemy of the people. And I nodded, and I listened, and I showed compassionate curiosity. And people began to de-escalate enough for me to say, help me understand what frustrates you most. And they wanted me to know that they felt the media was dividing people, and they felt the media disrespected them, and they felt the media looked down on them. And it evolved into a situation where I was able to crack a joke that actually made people laugh. They saw my humanity and reconnected with their own. So, yeah, people want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be respected.
Carter, you look like you want to say something.
I do, because I applaud you for saying that, and I think locally that is what most of our residents want, is to be heard. And if you've had the experience of going before council or any city meeting, and you immediately get the feeling they're not listening, they don't care what you say because they've made up their mind. And so that Kate's remarks about what that triggers in people is further stress. Like, I just want to say this, and I wish somebody would listen to me and maybe think that, hey, that's a different way of thinking. Maybe we should think about that. But in the last 6 years of our city, I would say we have not had that. Going to speak before council is an inherently stressful moment, because you know you're going to be challenged, you're going to be disrespected, and that's just part of the game. But we still go, but we know the outcome before we even go. But it's important, I think, for all of us as citizens and residents to go and try to speak and hope that someday somebody will listen and think, I hadn't thought of that. Let's have a further conversation, because right now we don't have those further conversations.
Okay, I'm going to bring us back to the concept or the discussion associated with social media, only because the situation you described, you were face-to-face with people and can make that interpersonal connection. Mm-hmm. And I know that going back eons to the old days of the BBSs and the internet relay chat, that people had what they used to call flame wars, where they were typing furiously at each other, having that kind of dialogue which produced nothing. And I'm guessing that's what happens on social media even today. In those days, you used a handle. Nobody knew who you were. You had the freedom of anonymity. Are people on social media using anonymity as a shield to allow them to say things and do things that they would not do if they actually had to own their actions? Anyone want to take a crack at that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I mean, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think the short answer is yes. People use anonymity to feel protected to say things that they wouldn't feel comfortable saying to you, to your face. There is a sense of power that comes from that, right? And if you feel like you don't have control over some aspect of your life, if you don't feel powerful or respected, if you feel dehumanized, being able to attack someone, being able to get likes and affirmation from certain corners of the internet can feel really good. And for some people, it can make change, you know? And so that is meaningful for people, not necessarily looking at the long-term effects, both of degrading yourself in an attempt to gain clout, and degrading others for the process of, I don't know what. Anybody been a troll? I mean, it's very common. I'm sure it's, someone save me, come in.
I think we see it the most on social media, right? Because you can be so anonymous and on these online forums. But, you think about it, I think it's a gradient of how interactions work. People are more rude on the phone than they are in person.
True.
And Zoom's probably in between in person and on the phone. But that sort of level of removal, that level of, I think what it is not only do you have some level of anonymity, but the person you're interacting with, you're able to dehumanize them in a way that you can't do when you're seeing them, when you're seeing their reactions, when you see how your words might be hurting them. And so I do think that it facilitates that kind of environment, which, I think we need to do things to combat it because it is very destructive.
Yeah, and the other thing, womp womp, like Debbie Downer, but like, we're really good at dehumanizing each other. This predates social media, right? Like, if you have a different color, if you're of a different class, people have been dehumanizing and othering each other since the beginning of time, and now technology is being used as a mask to do it as well. So again, it's like we can blame it on technology. I definitely think it emboldens and empowers people. And at the same time, people used to wear hoods instead of being in chat rooms, right?
I'm just curious, is there a technological solution to filter out any interactions that aren't genuinely from a human?
I think it's analog. Abstain.
Just don't engage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it's even more troubling in a way? I agree completely with what you're saying, and there are many anonymous bloggers, but I'm also troubled that people use their real name, real identity, and continue this kind of vulgarity and threatening behavior, and there seems to be no consequence to it. Nobody, our leadership, nobody says, wait a minute, that isn't an appropriate way. In fact, some of the leadership is doing that same threatening behavior here. So it troubles me, the anonymous people trouble me, but it's also troubling to me that actual real people feel absolutely no restraint to say whatever they want to say, especially on social media. Not, like you say, not face-to-face, but online, they will do it. And I think that's scary for our society.
Is there a financial incentive for them to do that, or is it just they get some kind of endorphin high from being a jerk?
I think they get Kate's high that she's talked about, that
I get my high. I wish I could brand it, then I'd get the money. But, just kidding.
I just think they feel power that they might not have. But one problem to me is that the people who do have power do not tone the rhetoric down and do not say that's not appropriate. They continue that and will engage on social media and engage face-to-face within the city.
So what's to stop other social media users from unfollowing or just tuning them out?
The technology is engineered to be addictive.
Yeah.
So when I say, the solution is analog, that you have to abstain, it is literally like you have to find some other way to engage and calm that response that wants to be in this.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a cultural shift we want to see, right? Because as long as these people are being rewarded for this behavior, they'll continue doing it. And so unfollowing, abstaining, not rewarding it, and then creating a culture where people don't accept it, don't respond positively to it, and really sort of setting the example ourselves, I think, is a first step. Because I do agree, I don't know that we're seeing it from a lot of political leaders as far as the examples, but that means I think it's more on us to do that.
Well, that leads into my next question, and I had two parts, a local and a more national level. From an Alexandria-centric viewpoint, Carter, what do you think the city and leaders can do to turn down the temperature? And I think I might already know the answer to this, so if you don't have anything to add, we will keep moving in the interest of time.
I think you already know the answer. They
Okay.
have to tone themselves down.
All right, so Kate, national leaders?
Yeah, I mean, national, local, in your family, in your office, we need to begin. I think we need nervous system literacy. I think we need to better understand our states of stress and relaxation, and notice when we are in a more reactive state. It's not fancy, but I think it could be transformative. And it's also not necessarily profitable. But we're at a point where we're stuck in cycles of harm. We're stuck in cycles of trauma and reactivity. And if we want to engage cycles of healing and cycles of intergenerational well-being, technology is not necessarily going to fix this, because we are the ones creating the technology. So we have to decide what image it's made in.
All right, JoAnn, from a First Amendment government perspective, do you want to add to anything that's been said?
I guess I'd just say, I mean, most people in this country, all the surveys say, most people think there's a problem with civility. The overwhelming majority, and even the strong majority, over 70% of people want to be part of the solution. So like we have the numbers for actually making a change. And so I just think it's a matter of really trying to infuse our culture with that. And I know we only are really responsible for our own actions and can only really control those, but that is a start. And I think that's where we have to start.
And I want to add to that, because I just realized I meant everything I said. And I don't want to blame this only on the individual. I think in this country we focus on individual, and we have a multi-billion-dollar wellness industry as well that suggests if you do yoga and you learn about your nervous system, as I just said, we can get our way out of this. Yes, and there are systemic factors that keep people chronically stressed. There are systemic factors that keep people chronically dysregulated and in chronic cycles of trauma. And so if you want to disrupt this polarization and the collective trauma and hurt that adds to it, we have to be shoring up our communities. We have to make sure people have housing. We have to make sure people have food. You know, it sounds so simple, but truly, in order to heal, we have to have the conditions to do that.
Okay. Final question for the panelists. If a genie just appeared on this stage and gave each of you one wish to make, that you can, well, one opportunity, magical power to make one change, what would it be? And I'm just going to go down the line.
If a genie granted me a wish, I wish that people had the conditions to heal whatever pain that they're in.
JoAnn?
I think I'd wish that people would assume the best intentions when they're listening to others rather than the worst.
Victor?
I would want for people to listen to themselves before making decisions, and just don't follow other leaders. We become followers. Sometimes we follow people so much that even if we have our own opinion, once we listen to that one person, that one leader, we decide to change our opinion, even if it is against our values. So just follow your values, listen to your own opinion.
Carter?
Well, again, I wish our leadership would take a more prominent role in this and recognize that most people in this city who want to be active and want to speak up are wishing the best for Alexandria, as well as our leaders are. but somehow that message is not conveyed, and the stress level between leadership and citizens, I feel, is at a very low point. And I would love our leaders to go talk to Kate and other people and learn how to lower their temperature, and then maybe we could all lower ours.
Well, maybe we can arrange that. I don't know.
Maybe.
Thank you guys very much. I hope you got something out of this. You've learned a few techniques that you can use, and you guys were great. So that concludes our program. Next month, we're going to talk about aging in Alexandria. I believe we're going to be at the Minnie Howard School in the forum room there, and details to follow. Thank you all.
This is Agenda Alexandria, a nonpartisan organization that takes a look at the issues without taking sides. Whether it's the city's sewer system, education, public safety, climate change, or perhaps a look back into Alexandria's history, Agenda Alexandria is here to shine a light. What makes the organization so successful is our people. The people who run it, our panelists, our moderators, and of course, our members. Agenda Alexandria is a member-funded organization, and we invite you to become one today by visiting agendaalexandria.org.